I heard a lot of discussions over the last couple of days. I'm not a miner. I know not a whole lot about mining. And Ucore Rare Metals has been in the mining business, at least in the resource side of it, for quite some time. I joined the company as CEO just a couple of years ago. But my background is actually, I'm an entrepreneur. I started an automotive tier 1 company as a much younger mechanical engineer about 25 plus years ago, and grew that company into hundreds of millions of dollars a year of revenue, selling to companies like Ford, Stellantis, GM, Hyundai, Kia, Mercedes, VW, Nissan, Honda, Toyota, all of them. And I could see in the last number of years, as the electrification plans were popping up on the radar of the automotive company that I still kind of spearhead, that the metallic supply chains to be able to make them happen were non-existent. And that became a real opportunity. And I'm in the business of building production plants, and I wanted to really do that for Ucore and take the resource that's been in development as a heavy rare earth resource in Alaska and say, just put that aside for a minute. There's a way to get the revenue quicker. And the situation's pretty dire when you look at the grip that China's had, and we've talked a lot about that in the last couple of days here. Decarbonizing, new metallic supply chains. Benchmark Minerals spoke this morning about the battery side, and we heard a couple of talks on graphite and the battery side. But rare earths are actually equally important. Get my clicker right here. Which one are we working with? Yep. Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. Cautionary notes. You know, in order to take on this critical mineral shortage, it requires a lot of capital, requires a lot of capacity, but it also requires a lot of innovation. And I know from the mining side, when I listen to the mining stories, you know, there's a long trail of trying to go through all the process to get your mine up and running. And I think the government needs to step in and figure out a way to cut that time in half, have standardized procedures like they have in the automotive industry, and do it much quicker. But, you know, when it comes to the innovative side of things going on, innovation is the most important tool we have. The West has always led the way with its innovation. And whether it's processing innovation, business model innovation, or innovation needed at the mining side, it's very critical. You know, and right now on the planet, there are actually 8 billion people on the planet. And there are more people alive on the planet today than have ever passed away. The number's not even close. And so when you think of things like poverty and climate change that we've talked about here for a couple of days, and everything that's needed, innovation's needed to drive it forward. And when you think of China and how did they get there, you know, for the first part of the 20th century, just a real quick snapshot history lesson before we get into what we're doing with Ucore. The first half of the 20th century, all the innovations from the West got pushed into China because they had millions of people, and they had low-cost labor, and it was take our innovations and make them. So they did. And they scaled up, and they scaled up, and they scaled up. And then for the last 50 years, with the one-child policy that kicked in after the baby boomers, the millennials that came along, there weren't enough of them to actually continue with the millions of people that are producing what we'll call, I guess, copycat manufacturing. And so because of that, actually by 2030, there'll be about 90 million less working class people in China than there are today. And every year thereafter, it'll go down by another 8 million people. So China woke up with all their policies and they said, wait a minute, we've got to change things here. We have to go from imitation to innovation. And so they've done that. And they've been smart with their policies. You know, look at the talk we're having about battery and the grip they have on the battery side. And they have that same grip on the rare earth side. And it's dire. And we heard that you know, discussed here recently. Where the rare earths fit, they fit in permanent magnets. And the permanent magnets fit in 3 primary categories. EVs, we've talked about that. And the permanent magnets in the EV, they go in the motor. They help make that battery that we've talked about go that much further because the motor is driven by the most efficient means of taking electrical energy and converting it into mechanical energy. So EVs, you know, there are about 90 million new vehicles made in the world each year, 90. And by the end of the decade, a third of those are to be electric. Now, there's all kinds of, you know, reverberations right now. Oh, my God, Ford's backing off, and GM pushed their plans to 2025. That's just supply and demand adjusting itself. The path forward, as we heard from Benchmark Minerals this morning, all the data we've seen, it still reports that a third of your electrical vehicles will be part of the global population by the end of the decade. When you look at wind energy, you know, the Haliade X The Haliade X takes 2 tons of rare earth permanent magnets to run. And wind energy is a big part of a renewable path going forward. Or defense, national defense. When you think about rare earths being controlled by China, like the battery metals are being controlled by China, there's actually 920 pounds of rare earth in an F-35 fighter. Missile guiding systems work because of rare earth permanent magnets. Those rare earths are controlled by China. We heard Rob McEwen discuss yesterday at lunch about what's happening in Gaza and Israel and you know, the things that are descending upon it. You've got China, you've got Russia, you've got Iran, you've got North Korea. Those closed economies want the open economy to fail. It's a battle of open and closed economies. Again, back to the point of innovation to get to where we need to be. Getting to our business plan here. But the rare earth side, the challenge and the opportunity. The challenge is that 60% of rare earth resources are in China right now, but 87% of separation to the critical seeds of technology, as the Japanese call them, they're controlled by China. That means they're reaching outside of China now and bringing material back into China for processing and turn into final products. And the final products, the rare earth permanent magnets, they're 90% plus of the global market. So they've really got a tight grip. And you know what? They didn't hide it from us. They told us they were going to do it, and they did it. Go back and read the 5-year policies. It's all there. The opportunity is that by the end of the decade for the rare earth side, the battery side is equally important. You've got $32 billion in rare earth oxides by the end of the decade. The ex-China market's about half of that, $15.7 billion. And the Ucore goal from a innovative side is let's go after $3 billion of that. And let's build 3 processing plants that allow you to self-use and take resources that are ex-China and process them and help bring the supply chain back. And let's joint venture with a couple of mining operations to be able to, in an in situ way, whether it's in Australia, Western Africa, South America, build a plant that works with the mining companies. This is how China has taken control. The important thing here is that rare earth ore on the far left, that doesn't get shipped out of China. It's illegal. The rare earth oxide, those seeds of technology, the next node, that too, there's no tolling allowed in China. It's illegal to toll materials in China. You can't ship those oxides back out of China. So if you're a rare earth company right now being developed anywhere outside of China, your only opportunity to work with those materials is to send them back to China, and that's it, they're gone. And then downwards to the right of this supply chain, you'll see the magnets are controlled, the metals and alloys are controlled. And it's sort of like the French, where they say, we'll sell you a fine bottle of wine, but you're not going to get the grapes. And that's what the Chinese have done. They've taken that approach, and that's what needs to be broken. So when you look at a little more intricate supply chain, where Ucore fits in this is right in the middle. That mid-market where you take the resource that's US friendly and the downstream with new magnet making and new alloy metal making, and you're the bridge right in the middle. That technically difficult job of being able to get those rare earth oxides separated for use, that's where Ucore fits. And when you think of permitting a mine, because I've heard it here, 6, 7, 8, 10 years plus to permit and get the mine up and running, you can have a separation facility that uses friendly input resources. You can have that permitted in 8 weeks. And the footprint and the CapEx and all the things that go with it, they're much less. So mining is very important. Time to mining has to be fixed. We need to have a more innovative approach to get that done. Separation of oxides is critical. Well, let's look at how we do that. Back 3 or 4 years ago, I guess 4 years ago now, we took a look at the global landscape outside of China, and we said, well, what types of processes are being developed to be able to separate out those critical rare earth oxides? And we heard Michael say at lunch this morning, you know, new technology, be careful. And he's right, because new technology can take time. However, when we looked around the global landscape, we saw nanotech, we saw molecular and printed polymers, high energy, high intense processes. We found a company called Innovation Metals Corp, and they were using a technology called Rapid SX. The thing we really liked about it is that the only process used in the world today to separate out rare earth oxides is called solvent extraction. And Rapid SX was a way of taking that exact same chemistry and applying it much more effectively. And what that meant was you go from huge mixer settlers and football fields to generate one resource, as they do in China, to a column-based technology that doesn't have impellers and motors. It takes up a third of the space. The OpEx is better because the residence time is much improved. And so you get an increased throughput in a plant with much less CapEx. A 5,000-ton solvent extraction plant in American dollars, to build one today, $300 million plus. To build a 5,000-ton rapid SX plant, $55 million US. Innovation kicks in. Is it a leap? No, it's not a leap because it's the same chemistry, and that chemistry is proven. But let's apply it that much more effectively. Again, that's what the West has always done. It's always had the ability to innovate to get to where you need to be. So with that, you've got a pretty smart path forward. This is what a commercial demonstration plant looks like. This is in Kingston, Ontario, 2.5 hours from here. It's hard to tell by the picture, but it's the size of 2 tennis courts. It's 16 feet high. You're running disciplines called FMEA, failure mode effect analysis. It's an automotive term. Means run the heck out of this thing, try to make it break, fix those things before you go to commercial deployment. I've walked into pilot plants before. You see a couple of Bunsen burners and a beaker and someone with a white lab coat on you. You're kidding me, right? I mean, you've got to make a commercial demo plant that really gets you to where you need to be. And PPAP, preliminary part approval process, again, automotive. We're running spec trial for automotive companies here. And by the way, the customer here is the automotive company. Someone said in the previous presentation, the automotive companies are going right back, like the days of the Model T and Henry Ford, investing in the rubber plants, investing in the iron ore, getting done what needs to get done to be able to secure their supply chains. Not like the internal combustion engine. It's a whole new market with EV. Government, Inflation Reduction Act, big program. We're a Canadian company. They went out to bid about Q4 of last year, and they said, let's find the most innovative technology to process heavy rare earth, because heavy rare earth is missing, and light rare earth as well. But heavy rare earth in particular, that's how you build a permanent magnet. There's none of that outside of China. And they scoured with the DOD. We made a number of trips to the White House, to the Pentagon. We talked about our tech. We met with science people, and they love what we're doing. And they awarded a $4 million program to say, go ahead, run your Kingston plant, we'll pay for it. Just run the heck out of it and get it ready for commercial. And by the way, we'll put another $10 million on top of that to build your plant. Find a place to build your plant and get that done too. So we searched on the Gulf Coast, we landed in Louisiana, and Louisiana stepped up, and they put forward $15 million in incentives to be able to build a plant in Louisiana. Because innovation, at the end of the day, is the deployment of commercial invention. Invention is eureka. Innovation is put it to commercial use. And that's where my background's been. So the mining side, I'm really learning a lot, but the innovation, build a plant, get something done, this is what happens. You take a look, you check all the metrics. We found all the right economic conditions. We talked to the power corporations, the gas companies, the local universities. Brownfield building, not greenfield. Greenfield will take 2 more years. Brownfield, get in the market, start servicing customers. And so we found a brownfield building, 80,000 square feet. We can actually build or process 7,500 tons ex-cerium, ex-yttrium, which really is quite substantial. And the engineers like to talk about the number of heavy rare earth lines and light rare earth lines, everything that goes with this facility. You can see an aerial view and all the engineering that goes with it. I like to look at this plant and go, that's 3.8 million electric vehicles. I like to look at this plant, number 1, by the way, Strategic Metals Complex, number 1. I like to look at this plant and go, that's actually 7,500 Haliade-X turbines. That actually powers 120 million homes. There are only 140 million homes in the US. That plant will generate enough oxide to get that done. What are the economics? 5,000-ton plant, 500 million. Top line, 2022 pricing. Return, somewhere between 28 and 32. The engineers are still working on the fine-tuning to get that number right. So a really good return because supply-demand breaking into a market. And by the way, the shortfall, even with all the new mines coming on board, 30 million vehicles at the end of the decade, we're still 14 million EV vehicles short. That's how much mining and separation has to work to get the job done. This is copy and paste. You take that column tech you saw in Kingston, you plug it into the building, you engineer it. We're working with Orbital Engineering out of Pittsburgh. They build big energy plants. Working with MECChem out of New England, they build chemical plants. Working with Kingston Process Metallurgy up in Kingston, they're top drawer. Timeline, to market. I tell our team all the time, and by early 25, we'll be producing in Louisiana, but I tell our team all the time, it's great to talk about the markets. At the end of the day, markets don't buy anything, customers buy things. Find out who your customers are, reverse engineer. You can imagine with my background, we're talking to all the automotive companies. We picked 3 for Louisiana that we feel are the right ones for the offtakes. We're in red line agreements going back and forth, negotiating pricing and whatnot. And from a pricing model, I'll just make this one comment. If you let China puppeteer your price up and down, whether you're a mine or a separation or whatever, if you let that happen, it's not going to work because the state-owned Chinese government will drive you into the ground. So negotiate with your automotive company or your customer, negotiate a floor. And what that floor does is says, hey, automotive company, you want to protect us and you want to protect an ex-China market. You want to de-risk, not decouple, but you want to protect us with a floor. So let's do that. And if the Chinese drive the price down here, it doesn't matter. Stay where you need to be on the floor. That keeps you, the separator, healthy. You can negotiate a healthy contract with the mine. The mine can negotiate with a bank. And you get an ex-China supply chain. In an electric vehicle, it's only $350 to $400 of rare earth oxide. If you don't have it, you don't have a vehicle. But say the Chinese drove it down, it was $150. Do you really think that that difference, that delta of $100, $125, $150 really matters to an EV that costs $55,000 right now? No. But having that floor and that protection, that does. And cap structure, really tight, 22%, 2 holders that are about 11% each, Concept Capital out of Europe, and Orca Holdings out of Alaska, big industrialist. Some near-term drivers. We'll have offtakes announced. We've got new resources coming into the plant that will be ex-China resources being announced. We have more U.S. government funding to announce. The Canadian government's a little flat-footed right now. They're going, holy shit, a Canadian company just walked in. DOD loved them. They presented all this money, and we're the Canadian government with programs. We better get our act together. That's part of our news flow going forward as well. So those are substantial things happening in our near path forward. Louisiana construction plans as they come together. And then finally, hey, it's Western game on. You've got to innovate. That's how we've always done it. Back in the 1990s, who was the big threat? Japan. Oh my God, Japan's going to take over the economic threat. And all the big up-and-coming companies in the 1990s were Japanese. Today, 7 of the top 10 companies in the world are U.S., they're North American, they're energy, they're technology, because innovation won at the end of the day. And if I could take just 3 points and sort of take a Warren Buffett approach, when you go with something like this, you've got to have low technical risk. You've got to be able to get that technical risk to market where it needs to be. That's why we like the Rapid SX technology. You've got to have it financeable. I think these were some of the points that Michael brought up at lunch. It's got to be financeable. It's got to have a people plan. It's got to be engineering ramp-up friendly. I've had a career doing it. I love the plan that we have. And last, it's got to be first mover. Get to the market. And from an innovative side, the miners, man, I'd tell you, I'd fight with the governments. Take that timeline to get to market, and I'd cut that in half. The automotive does it all the time. They have disciplines that walk you through it, so whether it's permitting or legal, get those disciplines cut in half, and let's get the mines on board. We need them. We're in shortfall. I think I might have went over my time a little bit, but any questions?